My name's Ian Tuena. I've been in the industry for 38, 40 years nearly, and it's been exciting. It's a great industry, been a great industry to be in, but we certainly are on the precipice of change and significant change. We've been dragged kicking and screaming to the table as an industry, but the world's at our feet. So before I start, I'd just like to get a bit of an indication of who we've got in the audience. So how many consultants? Just hands up who are consultants in the industry here. All right? The challenge is yours, boys. The challenge is yours, okay? Because you are the guys who set the parameters. You are the guys who've got to think outside the square, and you need to start thinking outside the square, because quite frankly, and I'll be a little bit critical, you haven't. Okay? Now, journalists. How many journalists we got here? Any journalists at all? One. Now, you've got a big job on your shoulders. You've got rid of 3 prime ministers. Hopefully you can get rid of an environmental minister. All right? But you are the mouthpiece. You are the ones who say, particularly in our field of natural refrigerants, dangerous ammonia leak. Everyone's going to die. Hydrocarbons have been put into this facility. It's all going to blow up. We're all going to die. Now, pardon me, but I can't quite frankly understand how we can have a 50 kilo bottle or an 80 kilo bottle of LPG outside of every farmhouse, tapped to an unregistered source, and it could be operated by a 2-year-old child to an 80-year-old person with dementia, and we haven't got a problem. But we put that substance in an air conditioner that's serviced by a qualified and trained person, that it has maybe 200 grams, 300 grams of the stuff in there, and we've got a bomb on our hands. All right? I don't quite saw the rationale. Now, I ask you all to do a hazard analysis on driving an automobile. You never get in a piece of metal on wheels with a powerful motor that hurdles you down the road at up to 200 kilometres an hour and into a tree, because that's the result. You do a JSA on it, boys, and that's what you're going to have. It's too dangerous to drive, so don't get in them. Just what's happening, the supermarket industry in Australia, and I think they're the first we need to start with, because they are the big determiners. They're the big movers within the industry. They already have set the precedent. All right? So we look at what Aldi are doing, we look at Woolworths, I see Dario's here, we look at Coles, and we look at, because they are the big influences in our industry, and I am really pleased last year at the refrigeration conference held here in Sydney to see Coles and Woolworths headed by 2, I think, forward-thinking young men and who will help lead this industry into the area that needs to go. So Michael Saville and Michael Englebright and Stuart Saville are both forward-thinking, and they've both pushed the industry into an area that they believe, and I think it was in our inevitable future. And Aldi have also sort of leading the charge with their current use of hydrocarbons in their dairy cases. So typically in an Aldi system, they're using CO2 and 134A Cascade. They use it for chiller and freezer rooms and multi-decks, and a typical 5 kilowatt on the low temp and 89 on the medium temp. 145 stores around Australia. What have we found? A small efficiency improvement, a good refrigeration performance, and the elimination of all 404, right, out of their systems. They've utilised R290 in the chest freezer. So what you see when you walk in an Aldi store, you all would have seen it if anyone's been in them. All the little cabinets along the freezer cabinets are all on R290, are all on propane. So, and they've got 150 grams of hydrocarbon charge in them. It's not going to blow you up. All right. The results so far that they've learnt, the systems are very reliable. and it has significantly improved. So they've gone for the option where they haven't got a major plant, they've got a small plant, and they use ancillary equipment, individual items throughout. And so that system has worked quite well. This system, well, these slides are presented by HVACR, who've done a lot of work consulting down in Melbourne. See Craig's here. So these guys have done a lot of work with Aldi in the way they operate their stores and their refrigeration designs. They're now looking at CO2 transcritical, and it utilises the low temp booster and 3 medium temp compressors. It's a single gas cooler, and I'll try and keep it very non-technical. So is in a CO2 transcritical system, the condenser, we don't have a normal refrigeration system, we run at much higher pressures, and this is the kind of the fear of the unknown, because we're running at a much higher pressure in these systems. And the reaction time is much, much quicker. I think Ian would, who's going to come on after me, you don't get time to sort of watch the pressure slowly rise in a CO2 system. It rapidly escalates, and if you're not don't have your system under control, very quickly you'll have the relief valves banging left, right and centre. Is that right, eh? So, but the release is carbon dioxide. That's what's released. It's a one-for-one release into the atmosphere. So you can see that they've had a good performance on their multi-decks. They paid a cost premium, and this is probably the initial stuff as the CO2, particularly transcritical, gets up the road. I think subcritical systems and cascade systems are well and truly established in Australia. So from that perspective, they're proven. It's not bleeding technology, it's leading technology. So we're well and truly past that phase, both nationally and internationally. However, in Australia, transcritical has probably been a little bit slow on the uptake to this point in time, but I think you'll see in the very near future a strong move to transcritical. The standard system is a CO2 on the low stage and a 134 doing the medium stage. That's pretty much the standard system within a supermarket configuration, and that would be pretty much Dario. That would be Woolworths.
You've got 200 of them.
200 of them, proven, well proven. Yep. And now Woolworths, I think, have just put in 2 CO2 transcritical plants in Woolworths in New Zealand. Yep. Yep. So we're having a look at it there. Coles did their first transcritical plant sometime last year. They've got it up and running. There's been a couple of little technical issues, and that primarily stems from my understanding the installation team and the commissioning team were 2 separate entities, and trying to get it, I know certainly when we did our first transcritical system with Klaus at X Cuisine, it's that midnight experience when you sort of look around and there's no one there and you're just left in the plant room, and to try and get things sorted out when things are happening that you don't quite expect as a refrigeration mechanic. But it is pretty simple, and I think Ian will back me up on this. If you apply the same basic refrigeration principles that you started with as an apprentice, then there is no fear of the unknown. It's just being aware of the idiosyncrasies of each individual system. The general consensus is that I think Coles are pretty happy with that site. I think it's worked reasonably well for them. And interestingly, we come back to this 15% savings on energy reported. It's in the Melbourne area, so we have the advantage of being in Melbourne, and we'll see a few slides shortly. But we have the advantage of being in Melbourne that the vast majority of the weather pattern has it that we're not operating in transcritical mode. We're generally in subcritical mode for a large proportion of the time, and therefore the energy savings that we do manage to achieve, we get that 15% across the board. And that's pretty well borne out by Ignacio's comments across the board, and you see this right across the world. So it's really not new. And now Coles have also done something interesting. They've gone into they've used hydrocarbons on on some of their liquor stores. And as you can see there, the gram charged, we're looking at 650 to 850 grams per unit. So coals are already in that field that is often thrown up, and is certainly thrown up by those within that are still trying to hang on to the past using synthetic refrigerants. Those guys are saying it's going to blow up, it's going to blow up. Well, we're past the limit. Coals are already past the limit in that area there. You can see that quite clearly in their case. And this is where we really strike the problem. So let's have a look at some barriers to adopting this sort of technology within Australia. Initially, we had some high costs of initial capital costs. That was probably the first thing that, until we became familiar with the technology, it was difficult to produce the same cost structure that we were producing with putting the synthetic plants in. But I think we are now almost at parity, maybe marginally higher, and I think we're not too far away from being marginally lower. I think this mismatch of HFOs, and this is my own personal opinion, but I think it's borne out for those who have been singing this song, the likes of Klaus and Stefan, for the last 10 years at least. Why the heck are we going through another change into HFOs? Why go down this path? It is totally unnecessarily. We have the means, we have the technology. Have we got the heart? Have you as consultants got the heart? That's the challenge to you. And I can tell you from bitter experience, you know, in the experimental field, it can cost you a substantial amount of money, but somebody has to do it. Somebody has to stick their neck on the chopping block. And we can see, you know, the likes of Stefan has built a successful business, and he'll be talking about his low charge businesses. Ian has built a successful business by having a heart and putting their neck on the chopping block. We all need to do the same. And so once we get past that technology barrier and we're starting to, okay. I've got to push through this quickly then. We get past that technology barrier, we start going on to the knowledge of it, and it becomes the same as what we did with a standard traditional CFC, HFC system. It will become commonplace. The fear of the unknown is what prevents us from having a fair income crack. Well, I'm saying lose that fear. Let's move on from that. We certainly have a huge issue in looking at knowledge and training. Training. And if there was one thing I could sing out to our media friends, we need to get that message across to the government that, you know, we need money spent in education on this area here. That is the single solitary message that we need to get out, because the industry has to be retrained. I think Michael, I just saw you walk in, he'll verify that from, you know, from within the industry, trying to get the skills needed within the groups of people that we have, and to switch from this paradigm to this paradigm is what we need. And we need to get that message out. We need funding within the TAFEs. We need to get that message out loud and clear. The next thing is inconsistent regulatory barriers. And we're currently going through a whole rework of codes and practices, and I'm afraid to say that they are just conflicting. They are conflicting across the board. And somebody needs, and Tim has done a fantastic job with the ARA in trying to bring this thing to a head, but we need to get a standardised set of codes that are applicable for what's going to happen in the future. The short-term side, or the short-sightedness of what is currently happening within the legislative state and federal and standards sphere is just mind-boggling. We need to clear the decks and start again with proper codes and practices that do not compromise safety, that do not put anyone to jeopardy, but certainly they are just conflicting at the moment. And again, we go back to education. and we need our industry bodies to uptake this and really push. We need AERA, we need ARAMA, we need ARO, we need everybody singing the same song consistently, loud and clear. And as an industry group, whatever membership you hold, we need to get that across to our various bodies. Let's sing the same song, let's work together, and we will have a strong and bright future, undoubtedly. We formed a little company called the Natural Refrigerants Company. It's just a small company, but our whole concept behind that is providing natural refrigerant solutions for the industry. We're sort of singing the need to change. I'll go quickly through this. So I think this is an interesting statement from Winston Churchill. I think Klaus will love this one. He's a Winston Churchill man. But the era of procrastination, of half measures, of soothing and baffling expedients, of delays is coming to a close. In its place, we are entering a period of consequences. Ignacio succinctly put those consequences ahead of us. Global warming is here, it's happening, and we need to do something about it. And as an industry, we have a significant impact on that. We, as an industry, single-handedly can have a big impact on the global warming. And again, to the consultants, that is your challenge. It's no doubt the world is moving to a sustainable future and driven by climate change. Our industry is adapting to it. So here's some clear benefits. It only uses natural substances, so if ammonia gets out into the field, it's nitrogen and hydrogen. That is what it's going to break down to. Our objectives are to bring some leading edge technology. We've got an agreement with Advancer in Denmark, who I think have proven themselves in the world of transcritical. We are representing them here in Australia. We'd also promote stuff such as Stefan's product in the scan packages. We would be happy to do George's stuff. We'd be happy to do Ian's stuff. Anyone to do with natural refrigerants, all we want to do is coordinate them and steer people in the direction of that area. That's what the Natural Refrigerants Company is about. And we are about training, losing the fear and training people. For those of the technical mind, that's a typical Advancer CO2 transcritical system. We did a small package in a flower farm, did a little hydrocarbon chiller to do pressure cooling for flowers on a flower farm. And interestingly, on that subject, for the technical minded, the savings that we did on paper were very marginal. The savings we achieved in practice on that system were quite significant. They were up to 15%, although that didn't show out on the papers. When we did the calculations, we didn't see those savings. I've probably gone through most of the issues, but here's a couple of things. Again, I come back to the consulting in an engineering fraternity. Get your head around it, right? If we can build a tin box, fill it with liquid hydrogen, put a helmet on a bloke, strap him to the top and send him to the moon safely, surely to goodness, we can build a safe ammonia plant in the city of Sydney, such as Bangarang. Why in the hell did a plant go in there such as it went in? I would challenge you engineers to think about that. You had it at your feet and you blew it. Again, we've been over quite a lot of that stuff that we can prove that the energy performances in a transcritical 5% energy savings, 20% compared to a R34 CO2 cascade, and that's pretty much in the bag. We think we can get better advantages, but that's what I wanted to put up. I know we're all blokes here, but that's my brand spanking new granddaughter, Mary Ling Long Tuena, right? I think she's beautiful. You may not think so, but I think she is. She comes with the cultural heritage of China, the cultural heritage from our Indigenous people of Australia, long history, particularly Indigenous people of Australia, in protecting this environment. She is our future. She is what we are sitting here for, and that's my challenge. Thank you.